and I'm going to share a screen with you. And today we are talking about mastering stress and avoiding burnout. I'm not going to go into who we are. Actually, let me just tell you a little bit about who we are, just really quickly, just so you guys, you have access to some of this stuff. So the LightHouse Arabia, I'm the managing director and founder of the LightHouse Arabia, which is a mental health and Wellness Center in Suqeim, Dubai. We are one of the largest centers that provides mental health treatment in the region, with over 30 clinicians for psychology, psychiatry, which is medication management, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy. So we work with everyone across the age range, from children to parents to adults to adolescent families, couples, etc. One thing that I will say, and then I can move on, is that we actually have a lot of different support groups that we provide free of charge that are led by psychologists. So they're basically therapy groups that you can actually have access to free of charge for all sorts of topics. And there's about 20 of them. So you can, whether it is infertility or cancer or racism, grief, having lost someone to death, we have lots of different support groups, single parents, divorced individuals, heartbreak from a breakup, etc., etc. And these are all led by psychologists. So it makes it a very therapeutic, safe space for you to be able to go. And they're all free of charge and they're all online. So it's very easy to access. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And then the rest of the stuff, you guys can find us on all sorts of social media, and our website is up to date to the minute. So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about stress and burnout. But first I want to say, well, why are we talking about this? Not like I need to go into too much detail, but I just want to mention it. The signs and symptoms of stress and burnout. What does that look like? The sources of stress, because sometimes we're like, I'm stressed, but I don't know why. I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot. Well, stress is additive, and all of these little, big, little things can actually add up to us feeling actually quite overwhelmed. And so what are the different sources of stress? And then we talk about mastering stress. Now, what I share with you today is obviously not an exhaustive way of you managing stress. So please don't say like, this is it and these are the only things. But if you are not doing these things, these are the bare minimum that I'm talking about, the basic things that you need in order to manage stress. If you are doing all of these at 100%, then we can go to like stress management 102, but this is the 101 that you're going to need in order for you to feel not overwhelmed and not overstressed. Okay. So this is not the end all and be all of stress management, but it is absolutely the necessities that you're going to need. So that's what we're talking about today. So let's just jump right into why are we talking about this? Well, stress has now been classified as the health epidemic of the 21st century. And 90% of our diseases and illnesses today are based on our lifestyle and stress and not genetics. We now know from the science of epigenetics that our genes do not determine our destiny. Our lifestyle will determine our destiny and whether we will have dis-ease in our body. So I can carry the gene of diabetes in, from generation to generation to generation. But if my lifestyle and in my, ability to manage my emotions and my psychological health and my mental health and my emotional health, all of that I'm taking care of, I don't necessarily have to turn that gene on, and that diabetes gene will not be something that gets activated in me. It might still be passed down to my children just through genes, but through lifestyle, we can actually manage to turn on and off these genes. And so much of our health and our illness actually depends on how we live our life. I'm not going to go too much into all the little details of what we're doing, but most health professionals are now actually saying that we are all in this mild to moderate range of this chronic stress that we are living in. And there's a chronic inflammation in our system, and inflammation equals dis-ease in the body. And so most of us are actually living like that thanks to technology and always being on and not actually having good habits in place that actually help us shut down and turn off for some time. So let's talk a little bit about stress, some facts, some myths, and some responses, okay? So raise your hand if you think some stress is good for you. Hand raising, okay, just a few people, good. So true, some stress is good for you, but that window is really, really narrow, guys. That window of stress tolerance, especially because all of us, most of us are actually quite stressed as it is. Our system is quite stressed as it is. So that window of what we can actually tolerate for more stress added onto the system is actually quite narrow. So while stress is good, distress is not good, and that window is actually quite small. Stress comes from events and circumstances. Raise your hand if you think it's true. Okay, some people think that it's true. Actually, it's false. Stress is not something that comes from the outside. Stress is the way we process what is happening to us. So two people can have the same exact experience, but because of the way I internalized that, or I viewed that, or I thought about that, or I made meaning of that, that actually is going to turn on different levels of cortisol in our body. So events and circumstances can be stressful, but there's a lot of people that will actually have post-traumatic stress growth versus post-traumatic stress disorder. And why is that? Is because they internalized and made meaning of things very, very differently. So your narrative and your story is going to be a very important component of stress management. Stress is the same for everyone. Raise your hand if you think it's true. Okay, nobody thinks it's true. Well, a couple people think it's true. So it's actually false. It's not the same for everyone. And we know that for a fact that my window of tolerance is going to be this big. My kids' window of tolerance might be small. My husband's window of tolerance might be actually quite big. So it just depends on what your window of tolerance is, what resources you have to bring to that moment. So if I have slept well and if I feel good and my body feels strong, I'm going to be able to handle that event a little bit differently than someone who's already feeling very, very overwhelmed and stressed and maybe just has become a new mother or just started a new job or had a death in her family. So those experiences can actually shift the way we respond to different stress. I cannot perform my best unless I'm stressed. True? Raise your hand. Okay, a few people believe that. Well, actually it's false. We know for a fact that when you are stressed, parts of your creative systems, your problem solving, your logical thinking, your analytical thinking shut down. Your aperture becomes narrow, and that actually isn't your best. You might actually just get the adrenaline to actually get moving, but that's not going to be your best work. So figure out why you're procrastinating and why you're waiting till the last minute. And then lastly, the best way to deal with stress is to exercise, breathe, and relax. Raise your hand if you think it's true. Oh, a lot of people think that that's true. Actually, it's false. It's false because it's not the best way. Those are some of the ways, but you have to think about what the best way for you is. Exercise is absolutely crucial. Breathing is absolutely crucial. Relaxation is crucial, but that is not going to be the best way for you. You have to figure out from everything that I'm going to share with you, what you are actually going to work on, and what is absolutely necessary for you. I know for me, sleep is absolutely fundamental to my stress levels. So before even breath work, I'm going to be focusing on my sleep. So you have to figure out what is going to be in that toolbox of yours for you to master stress and to have a life that you're not just managing stress. And that's why we call this talk Mastering Stress, because we're tired of managing the situation. We have to build a life where we feel like we are the master and we are not the manager of these different things. We feel like we're riding the waves that come rather than learning how to swim each time the wave comes. So how do we do that? You need to figure out what the best way is. I'm going to give you lots of suggestions, but you still have to figure out what the best way for you is. So let's talk a little bit about stress versus burnout. Stress is when you are over-engaged, you are reactive, overactive. There's a sense of urgency. You might feel like you're losing energy. You might feel tired a little bit. You might have a lot of anxiety, and it's just physically tolling. You all know that, right? The tension builds up and your head feels like it's running, and you're burning energy, and you just feel exhausted all the time. That actually is stress. Burnout is different. And burnout, guys, is a serious condition. I know a lot of us are like, oh gosh, man, I'm burnt out. That's not burnt out. That's like you feeling exhausted. Burnout actually is where you've been stressed to the point where you hit a level where you're now burnt out. Burnout is not something that you recover from over a weekend. Burnout is not something you recover from over even a week of holiday. Burnout is a serious clinical condition through the World Health Organization. It's called an occupational phenomenon, where it actually is where you've now literally come to a place of disengagement. You actually don't care. There's a blunted emotions. You're distant from your emotions. There's a sense of like, there's nothing I can do about this. And there's nothing I want to do about this. I'm not motivated to do something about this. It actually can feel a lot like depression. It's very emotionally tolling. So it's not, you actually don't have anxiety. It's literally apathy. You don't care. If the boss comes to you and says, you're going to get fired if you don't get your act together, you actually are like, okay, fire me. I don't really care. You're not thinking about survival. You're not thinking about what's going to happen next. You're almost disassociated. You're numb from that experience. And you literally have used up all the adrenaline and cortisol in your system. So that's what burnout looks like. Okay. So that actually is quite serious, and you need quite some time to actually recuperate and find your system and find your center and soothe yourself once again to be able to function. So that's when you've actually used up all the adrenaline and the cortisol in your system. So what happens in your brain when you're going through stress? I want to give you a little bit of what happens inside of our body all the time. And so in our body, I want you to look at this hand model by Daniel Siegel. So imagine that this is our brainstem and this is our brain, and this part of our brain is our frontal lobe. Okay. And so this part of our brain is the amygdala. This little thumb inside, and you see it in the picture here, is the amygdala. Way back when, if we go back to our Neanderthal cousins, they actually had a brain which was very much sort of driven by the fight or flight response. And over the eons of years that we've just developed as human beings and our brains got bigger, the frontal lobe, the neocortex came on, and the higher cortex was more and more developed. All mammals on Earth have the amygdala, and it is our fight or flight response. When the boss comes and says, you have to work this weekend, or someone comes and tells you, oh, I was fired, or someone tells you that there's been a death in their family, our amygdala turns on, and it's like a fight or flight response that kicks on inside of us. And that means we literally flip our lid, and our frontal lobe is no longer activated. And our frontal lobe is the seat of all of our higher level reasoning, our planning, our executive functioning, our ability to think through things, our ability to regulate our emotions, all sits in the higher cortex and our neocortex, which is later developed. And this differentiates us from all other animals on Earth. We have the ability to regulate ourselves through thought alone. But through this neocortex, we also have the ability to come up with scenarios where the zebra sees the lion, immediately his fight or flight response kicks on and he takes off. As soon as the lion is out of sight, he's calm again, like this. He doesn't have to think about the lion, worry about the lion, plan for the lion, think about all the other things that could have possibly gone wrong. He doesn't have the ability to do that. We have the ability to do that. So when we see something negative happen to us, or when we experience something negative happen to us, we flip our lid, and then our lid stays flipped off, right? We call our friend, we call our mother, we call our husband, we call our child, we call everybody. And you believe, I almost got in an accident, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So we actually really stay quite flooded for quite some time because our amygdala stays activated. So this is what's happening in our brain. And when that happens in our brain, all of this happens in our body. The brain sends a signal to our adrenal glands, release all sorts of hormones in your body. And the two most important ones that we actually are quite aware of are the adrenaline and cortisol. And that basically says, all right, lungs dilate, heart rate increase, liver start, converting the glycogen into glucose, so you have energy. All right, blood pressure start pumping, and that's where we are in that fight or flight mode, right? And when we are in that fight or flight mode, because through the eons of years that we've sort of been developed, and because we are like all other mammals, all of our long-term projects shut down because we need to conserve energy. We cannot run from that lion if we are busy digesting our food. No need to digest the food, says the system, because you're about to become someone else's food. Remember, our programming is from a very, very long time ago. We were actually getting run off by, we were actually being chased by lions. Now we're being chased by stressors that are different from that. But it actually is our mind that the system is all still very much the same. Instead of the lion, it might be that toxic person, it might be the boss, it might be, the partner that is actually quite toxic for you. So all of these systems are very much the same, and it actually sends a signal and says, all right, reproductive system, we don't need you right now. We need to keep this person alive. So shut down. Digestive system, shut down. Tissue repair, you do not need tissue repair when you're about to literally get ripped open. So don't need tissue repair. We don't need the immune system. We don't need the growth hormone. We don't need any of this stuff. Just use all the energy to stay alive. And that's why stress, especially if it's chronic stress, can lead to a whole host of physical problems like IBS and heart disease and high blood pressure and cardiac issues, et cetera. So I'm going to go into all of that. And these are all the different things that actually can happen as a result of chronic stress. Of course, physical pain, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart palpitations, obesity. You do not need to manage your insulin levels when you're about to, get eaten by a lion. All your hair loss, having upset stomach, decreased immunity, sleep problems, fatigue, all of this stuff can actually result of chronic stress. Now, there's a lot of people, I remember I did this talk once and somebody came up to me and they said, you know what? Nobody in my family ever had diabetes. I'm the first person actually to have diabetes, and he was like 32 years old and he looked fit as a fiddle, and he was actually saying, it was because of stress. And you actually can really damage adrenals to the point where insulin and all of these things are not being regulated, and you actually can lead to some serious physical disorders as a result of that. Chronic stress can actually lead to a lot of cognitive issues as well. Memory problems, you can't concentrate, you can't focus, you're constantly worrying, ruminating. And when that starts to happen, your aperture starts to narrow. Then you focus only on the problem, meaning only on the negative. Now imagine if you're running from a lion. You're not going to be like, oh, look at the flowers and oh, look at the trees. You're not. You're actually saying, where else is the problem? How do I stay alive? How do I stay focused? And that's why we really we lose perspective, our judgment becomes poor, we become super anxious. What am I missing? How am I going to stay alive? And that's literally because our brain is trying to keep us alive. And there's a lot of restlessness, obviously. Presenteeism is where you're actually at work, so you're not physically sick, but you're actually mentally somewhere else because you're just not able to be present because of all the different things that are happening in your mind. Also, you can actually have a lot of emotional issues, short temper. A lot of anger shows up in people, feeling insecure, feeling overwhelmed, burnout, moodiness, sadness, depression, sense of loneliness, isolation. These are all symptoms of chronic stress. If you see yourself in any one of these things, that's probably you're tipping over into the place of chronic stress. Too much of that, and you're going to end up into tipping over into the place of burnout. And then lastly, there's behavioral issues that show up, like, you're constantly feeling like you're rushing. You never feel caught up. You always feel like there's something to do. You're working longer and longer hours trying to do the same amount of work because, again, your brain systems are just not operating at the same levels. You're not sleeping properly. You're either overeating or undereating. You're yelling at the dog, the kid, the colleague, everybody that comes in your way. You start to smoke a lot more, do a lot more addictive behaviors, drinking, smoking, Netflixing. All of these things are quite addictive, and you can actually start to increase more to sort of numb yourself from that emotional space. Procrastinating, nervous habits, nail biting or pacing or any of these types of things. And of course, you'll have relationship issues, lots of crying spells for some people. That all can be a result of stress. So sources of stress, and I'm not going to go too much into that, but I do want to name them because sometimes we don't know why we are so overwhelmed. Like, why, I have everything. Why am I feeling so overwhelmed? So these were top 10 stressors that were named through different research. Low salaries, long and excessive work hours, few opportunities to advance, uninteresting stress, uninteresting work that you might be engaging in, so it's not challenging you, and so it just constantly feels like you're up against this, like swimming upstream because it's really just not energizing work. You don't have social support at work or in your personal life. You don't have a lot of control. Autonomy is so important for us to feel not so stressed, and you're not, constantly being micromanaged at work through bad management, and this poor organization culture. Your relationships at work, if they're very toxic, if you have a bully or multiple bullies, or you don't have good, assertiveness skills, you don't know how to draw boundaries. These can all be reasons why you're actually feeling quite overwhelmed. And then psychologically, there is a mindset that people have about stress. Most people will think stress is bad, and so stress is bad. But some people are like, oh, this was quite challenging for me, and so stress is not bad for them. So the mindset that they have about stress is actually very, very important. Some people actually are quite addicted to stress. Now, stress does release that adrenaline and it gets us going. And that's why some of you guys actually mentioned that I perform better under stress. And that actually could be that you're actually addicted to the adrenaline. And so we can be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, and we're moving from one stressful event. So even when we're not supposed to be stressed, we're like looking to be stressed because it's just become our mode of operation. We're actually just moving at that pace. If you've had a very difficult childhood, you are just used to being hypervigilant and moving in that stressful place, you're actually going to recreate stressful environments for yourself in present day. So that addiction is something that is very, very real. Type A personalities. Type A personalities are very sort of, high strung, intense, rushing, always on, a pace that most people can't keep up with, quite competitive, want to win all the time. And that type A is the biggest indicator of heart disease. And so before obesity, before smoking, before drinking, before any of these issues, The number one indicator of heart disease is type A personality. So if you are that type of person, I'm a recovering type A person, you've got to find a way to change those ways of being, because it burns out people around you as well as you. And so that's going to be something to work on. Perfectionism, which is very much linked to type A, but if you have that perfectionism where each email has to be perfect and each slide has to be perfect, then you're going to actually be struggling with a lot more stress than people who are not that. And then if you are not self-aware, you don't have control, and you don't have skills, you're actually going to feel a lot more stress. Self-aware because you just know how big your plate is. Oftentimes we're like, oh God, she just makes it look so easy, so maybe I should do it too. Don't look at her, don't look at him. You need to know if you are capable of this. Can you do this in your life right now? Do you know how to handle this? Do you need to learn skills to be able to handle this? Can you manage this? Like, people don't have that self-awareness, and they actually just keep looking at other people and then comparing themselves to the other people, and they actually fail as a result of that. And then they get hard on themselves, and the inner critic kicks on, and the perfectionism kicks on, and then they're full of shame, and the cycle continues for stress. So it's going to be very important to have self-awareness, guys. And then others, things like physical health can be a source of stress. Your relationships can be a source of stress. Daily life hassles like kids and school and COVID and, appointments and bills and finances and in-laws and guests coming and vacation planning. These small things can actually add up on top of all the other things that you're dealing with. So it's very, very important to keep sight of all of these different things that are happening and know what you're going to need in order to actually manage all of that. Of course, there's also major life events. COVID was one of those major life events that happened to us. We literally turned our life inside out, upside down. And we're all still struggling and grieving so much as a result of everything that we lost and everything that we are going through. And then there's techno brain, because we're moving from laptop to phone to iPad to Netflix. It's just too much for the brain. Our brain was never meant to take in this much information. Remember, we are not that far off from, our distant cousins here, but our brain is very much the same. There was one study done by mindfulschools.org that actually said that in one day of the newspaper, Khalij or Gulf News or New York Times, we consume more information than a person did in their whole lifetime in the 17th century. Okay, 17th century, okay, fine, that was a few centuries ago. Okay, you say, well, they didn't live that long. Okay, maybe 40 years, maybe 45 years. 45 years and one day of a newspaper. That's just a newspaper, guys. It's not social media. It's not your emails. It's not your WhatsApp. It's not your Netflix. It's not the books. It's not all of this information. It's too much for our brain to be able to manage. And so we are feeling so overwhelmed because our brain is not shutting down at all. And so techno brain burnout actually is a real thing. And I think a lot of us, if we're not using technology consciously, are probably struggling with this. And so what do we usually do to take care of our stress? We actually smoke, overeat, undereat, zone out in front of TV. We just pull away from friends. We procrastinate. We sleep too much. We fill up on all sorts every minute of the day to avoid thinking about the things that we're worried about. And then we might take out our stress on other people. And so this is actually all the different ways. By the way, these things work. They all work, but they're not sustainable, and the long-term damage that you're doing on your body is actually going to be quite big. So they do release dopamine, and they do give you some, immediate sort of escape or calmness, but they actually are not going to be good for you in the long run. And so I want to spend the next 30 minutes talking about some of the things you need to do in order for you to feel like you are mastering stress and not just managing day to day to day to day to day. These are absolutely essential things. And again, I'm not giving you these skills, I'm naming them, and you're going to have to do some work on your end to dive deeper into some of these skills, because this is a 1-hour webinar. We're doing top line stuff here. Okay. So these are the first things that you're going to have to think about. You're going to have to reset your threshold for stress. This is the window tolerance, remember, and you want to grow it. And when we are stressed, our window of tolerance of what we can actually take or not take is actually quite small. So the first thing I'm going to speak about is increasing your vagal tone. Now, if you look at the picture of the guy over here, he has a brain, and we all have a brain, and at the base of the brain is actually where the vagus nerve starts. Vagus nerve is one of the largest nerves in our body. Comes from the Latin word wanderer, and it actually wanders through your whole body, connecting your brain to all the major organs in your body. It connects to your lungs, it connects to your gut, it connects to your liver, it connects to your kidneys, it connects to your heart. And so it's connecting your brain to all the major organs in your body. Now, this is literally the essence of the mind-body connection. Now, if this is off, guess what else is off? And this is how your brain sends a signal to all the different parts of your body. Your heart starts pumping, your liver starts turning, glycogen into glucose. Like, this is precisely how it happens. But if we're in that constant inflamed state, we're literally exhausting our organs. And so we need to increase the vagal tone. And the vagus nerve is actually the battery pack for our rest and digest system. Fight and flight, this is the sympathetic system. Rest and digest, which is our parasympathetic system. The vagus nerve juices up the parasympathetic system. So if I have good vagal tone, I'm going to be able to bring myself into center very quickly. If I don't have good vagal tone, that means I probably have a lot of inflammation in my body, and my organs are probably working overtime and they're exhausted. So how can you improve your vagal tone? And that's going to be, sorry guys, I have to say it. I know people are like, don't say it, don't say it. It's meditation. Is going to be a great way to bring yourself to calm. And I know I'm not a big, I wasn't a big meditator, but it's now become a necessity because like I mentioned about technology, and because our brains are on so much, it actually is a mandatory thing that you're going to have to do. So even if it's for 10 seconds, guys, focus on your breath. Just do that for 10 seconds. Next time you do it, 15 seconds. The next time you do it, 20 seconds, and build up from there. When I first started meditating, my sister can meditate for like 10 hours. And I basically told her, I was like, I just can't even sit still for like, a minute. He said, don't do it for a minute, do it for 10 seconds. And that's precisely what and I did it for 10 seconds, and now I can sit for 16, 15, 20 minutes at a time. And that's because I slowly built up the muscle to sit and meditate. And so chanting, humming, gargling is actually going to be very good, because that is actually linked to the back of the brain. So you're gonna actually, anything that you go, and it's vibrating here, that actually is calming that vagus nerve, the base of that nerve, vagus nerve down. Cold exposure in the back of your brain. So if you take wet cloth and stick it in the freezer, and when you're feeling very stressed, just put the calm cloth, put the wet cloth on the back of your neck. That's going to be a great way. Ice pack in the back of your neck is going to be a great way. Cold showers, when you are done with the shower, let it be super, super cold in the back of your neck. And that's going to be a great way to juice up your vagus nerve. Socializing, laughing, again, anything that actually is here is going to be very, very good for your vagus nerve and your vagal tone. The next thing I want to talk about, I'm moving over to the right now, which is sleep. If you are not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, between 10 to 6, you are basically setting yourself up to be with a lid flipped up already. Remember that hand model I showed you at the beginning, where your brain actually sends a signal that says, hey, everything's under control, we're okay. This is our human brain, this is our animal brain. We actually can, if we haven't slept 7 to 8 hours, we are 60% more reactive. That means imagine your frontal lobe basically flipped up 60%. If you look at the fMRIs down here, which we've actually redrawn, but they were actually a picture of an fMRI, the amygdala, this part is 60% more reactive when you haven't gotten a good night's sleep. Quality and quantity matter. For those people who say, oh no, I don't need that much sleep. Yeah, that's what Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan said. And both of them had Alzheimer's in their old age. And so our brain needs, our body needs that sleep in order for it to regenerate, to recuperate, recalibrate, heal itself, wash out the sticky substances from our brain, to regulate itself. It's going to need that 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I do a whole other talk on sleep, but 2 things I'm going to say about sleep. 1, sleep is not rest, guys. Sleep is when your body goes into overdrive, basically healing, fixing, regulating. So sleep is not rest. That's what your body needs in order for you to function properly, your brain to function properly, for it to detoxify, for it to heal itself. And if you are not getting 7 to 8 hours, then you are literally setting yourself up. The second thing I will say is technology is really disrupting our ability to sleep into that deep state of the restorative sleep. Not all sleep is created equal. People are like, oh, well, I sleep at 2 p.m. I go home and take a nap. No, that is not the sleep I'm talking about. I'm talking about the deep, slow wave, restorative sleep that happens at night, which is what we need in order to feel refreshed. And what technology is doing, because of all the blue light that we're getting, it's basically sending that light, the bright light that we get all day long from all of our different devices. It's basically stunting the melatonin release stunting the melatonin release, which is not allowing us to go into that deep state of sleep. And so what you want to do is you want to get blue light blocking screen protectors, as well as blue light blocking glasses. On my Instagram, I have a sleep highlight, and I recommend all types of things you can do for your sleep. But this is absolutely fundamental to good mental health. Do not even try to do anything else I'm about to say to you if you are not getting this, because everything else will build up from here. Whether you exercise, whether you can relate, whether you can go out with your friends, whether you want to feel good about life, all of that is going to rely on you getting some good, sufficient sleep. And most of us actually are not getting good, sufficient sleep. How do you know if you are? If you wake up refreshed and energized and ready to take on the day, that's when you know you're getting good restorative sleep. If you're hitting that snooze button 13 times before you get up, you are not getting the right kind of sleep. And that means everything else is going off track as well. So this screen right here, this slide, if you're not doing these things, nothing else I say matters. Just do this first and then do everything else I'm about to say. So the third thing I will say is about food. Gut is our second brain. People say gut is our second brain because it has all sorts of, neurochemicals in the brain, in the gut. But I actually think it's the first brain because it came here first. The frontal lobe actually came on second. And so the gut actually produces 90% of our happy chemical called serotonin. You know, when you go to the psychiatrist and you say, I'm feeling depressed, and they give you antidepressants have serotonin and actually gives you more serotonin. Guess where serotonin is produced? 90% of it is in your gut. And if you are eating junk, then you will feel like junk. When they say you are what you eat, you literally are what you eat. And so you are really going to have to take care of your gut if you want to manage your stress or you want to master your stress. You will use up a lot more energy and a lot more, you're going to feel a lot more groggy and tired and exhausted when you are not eating properly. Also know that 70% of your immunity is produced in the lining of your gut. So you do want to take care of your gut, guys, as if your life depended on it, because at least your stress does. So gut is going to be very important. Limit your caffeine, limit your sugar, limit your alcohol. Going back to the sleep really quickly, don't consume alcohol past the hour of 10 a.m. And so if you are consuming caffeine after the hour of 10, then you actually are not probably getting the quality sleep. And I know people are like, oh my God, lady, she's insane. Trust me, I love my caffeine, but this really disrupts your restorative sleep. Fourth thing I'm going to say is about exercise. There's a lot of studies done on anti-anxiety, anti-stress, and things you can do to manage that. And exercise 3 to 4 times a week. If you were writing a prescription, you can write anti-anxieties, antidepressants, or you can write exercise 30 minutes at 75% of your maximum heart rate. Oh, but I don't have the energy to. Well, that's kind of how exercise works. You actually don't have the energy when you begin, but then the more you move, the more the energy starts to generate. Energy generates energy. So you've got to start moving. And so if you don't move at all, then you've got to actually start to move. And so you get a Fitbit, get some sort of tracker where you actually say, okay, well, how many steps do I actually move? And then start to build up from that place. Okay. So that's going to be very, very important. If you walk 1,000 steps a day, move to 1,500, move to 2,000, and slowly build up from there to where you are actually starting to get some energy generated. And then lastly on the slide is going to be very important that you drink 2 liters of water every single day. It's going to be very, very important. If you look up the symptoms of depression and you look up the symptoms of dehydration, you'll see that there's a huge overlap between the two. And so sometimes we have people come and say, oh, I have no motivation, I can't concentrate, I can't focus. And it literally looks like it's depression, but it actually could be dehydration. And most of us are chronically dehydrated. And so consuming water is going to be very, very important, especially now with Ramadan coming up. And then guys, I would say get a routine check. Every 6 months, I would do blood work. Every year, I would do blood work, magnesium, your vitamin D, your Bs. All of these things are going to be very important in order for you to feel like you have energy. So if this is not right, nothing else I say matters. Focus on this. People are like, well, where should I start? Start on this slide, take a picture of it and just do this, and then do all the other things once this is in place. The next thing I will say is you really got to learn how to manage your time. It's going to be super, super, super important. For me, time management is life management. If you don't know how to manage your time and you don't know how to time box, it's going to be very, very important that you learn how to do that. To-do lists don't work. To-do lists, actually, the research shows that the to-do lists don't work. You've got to learn how to time box. It's also going to be very important that you learn what you're going to delegate, what you're going to outsource, what you're saying yes to, and when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? What gets in the way of you being able to ask for help? These types of things are all going to be very important as time management. So like I said, I cannot teach you time management in 1 hour while I'm telling you everything about stress. But I can tell you that if you don't know how to manage your time and you constantly feel like you're running late and you're rushing from place to place and your to-do list is never ending, then this is a skill you're gonna have to spend some time learning. I always tell people, so you are not rushing and that adrenaline is not pumping, give yourself an additional 15, 20 minutes before you leave to go somewhere, just so you are not rushing. That adrenaline, guys, is really, really taxing for the body. So allow yourself to drive slowly, park slowly, walk slowly, just so you can move from place to place and not a rushed way. Time management. So another way, oh, sorry guys, there's something in my eye. So this is what time boxing looks like. This is literally each and every week, every hour of that day should be planned. Now I've boxed out those times in 45, 10-minute slots. So if you see my work schedule, it looks like this, but each hour has something in it. If I'm writing emails, if I'm creating content, if I'm finishing up a PowerPoint, if I have a call, if I have a meeting, each hour is actually blocked out. There will be time to do nothing. There will be time to spend with my kids. There will be time I hang out with my friends. There will be time that I meditate for longer periods. But you see those gold bars that are running through? That's my signal that says you need to stop what you're doing and meditate for 5 minutes. So meditating, and so for people who pray 5 times a day, it can be the prayer time, right? You start in the morning, you start in the afternoon, then you at the end, at the height of the afternoon, and then evening time, and then nighttime. This is where you can actually start to build in your meditation time. The pink bar basically means this is downtime, you're shutting it down. And usually before I see my children, I actually spend 5-10 minutes doing nothing. That means no phone, nothing. I'm actually might have my tea in my hand, I might be looking out my window, and I might actually be doing something like this to actually bring myself down. So this is what time boxing looks like. You guys can Google time boxing, but you're gonna wanna learn the skill if you're gonna wanna master your stress. Managing stress looks different than mastering stress. Next thing is going to be to focus on what you can control and then do something about it. Actions are empowering and they counteract fear. Do not wait for motivation, guys. If you are feeling out of control, this is what you're going to have to do to get a sense of control back in your life. And that means whatever you put in your time box, it should be an action. If you feel out of control about your finances, write down everything that is costing you, what you're, do an analysis of that. Where can you start trimming out some of your costs? Put something down on paper, because the same part of our brain that actually is engaged in action is engaged in worrying. So our brain actually fools us into thinking that we've done something about it when all we've done is worry, and we worry, and we worry, and we worry, and we worry. Do something in the physical world, write it on paper, because you cannot and you will not be able to control everything, but you can control some things. And when you do something about that, your brain actually calms down and says, all right, it's now under control. So physical realm is going to be very important. You guys have all seen these kinds of tiles and memes and PowerPoints about focus on what you can control. That's not enough. Do something. Smallest action in that realm is going to start to give you some momentum. If you feel tired and exhausted, just walk for 5 minutes and all of a sudden you've done something about generating energy. If you feel that you are out of control in your relationships, writing a card and saying, I love you might be one thing that you do to start to build those bridges again. Again, these are small things you start to do to gain a sense of control back in your life in places you might be feeling out of control. The next thing I will say, and then I will end with this, is what story am I telling myself? So our brain, like I told you, are wired for storytelling and detecting danger. Every morning in, the bushes, we actually used to say, what went wrong yesterday? What could possibly go wrong today? Who died yesterday? Who got attacked yesterday by these tribes and by these animals? Our brains are meant to look for danger, and they tell a negative story because that is linked to our survival. And our brain doesn't say, well, who knows? It doesn't do that. It moves into bad guy, good guy. And that's just the way our brain works. And it's a story that we immediately move into telling ourselves. However, we have the frontal lobe, and we can actually say, well, there's actually multiple realities here. And so I want you to preface your thoughts with the story I'm telling myself right now This is a story. Everything you tell yourself about your relationships, about your work, about your toxic, people in your life, whether they be colleagues, whether they be, in-laws, whether they be children, whatever, it's all a story, because they have their own story. And if I come into that realm, I'll see another story. So these are all stories that we're telling ourselves. And when we say the story I'm telling myself, we get a little bit of distance from it. And when we get a little bit of distance from it, we're like, well, the story I'm telling myself is that my husband is so selfish that he didn't tell me that he was running late. That's a story. What other story could there be? Well, maybe his phone is not working, or maybe he was on a call with someone very important and he couldn't actually message me because he was super focused on a crisis. Or, you see how one story will release all sorts of chemicals inside of me? Other stories might release something totally different. So the story I'm telling myself is that I'm not distinctive like my colleagues and I'll never get a promotion. It's a story. What other story could there be? The story is that you prefer spending time with your friends other than me, and I feel hurt, right? That's a story. But the story could be that they're actually going through a very difficult time right now and they can't be with you because they are actually quite depressed and anxious themselves. A story I'm telling myself is that I can't wake up at 6 a.m. because I'm not a morning person. It's a story, guys. It's not reality. The story could be that I actually need to go to bed earlier so I can wake up earlier. These are all stories. And I also want you to Google thinking traps online and look at all the different thinking traps that you might be engaged in. Black and white thinking, selective thinking, cognitive distortions. All of these things are actually ways where we tell stories, and they're different frames through which we tell stories. And then I'm going to stop here and maybe take some questions. And I would say choose your words very, very carefully. Know the power of I am. If you say, I am so stressed, I am so overwhelmed, the universe actually, a lot of people say that whatever follows I am is going to come looking for you. So never, ever say, I am tired. You can say, I had a very productive day, right? I did a lot today. My body needs rest is very different from I am exhausted, because you're literally sending signals and messages to the brain. And that is actually going to be a lot more depleting. When you say I had a productive day, or I was very busy today, or my body needs rest now, these are very different ways of saying the same thing. When you say I have to go to the gym instead of I get to go to the gym, so many of us were really suffering when we were all in lockdown, and we really just wanted to do the very, very basic things of being able to go out, go to the beach, go to the restaurants, go to, the mall. And now we're taking those things back for granted again, even though we swore that we would never take it for granted. But we get to do this. And so immediately you come to a place of gratitude. I get to cook for my children. I get to work today. I get to do this talk for you guys today. I get to hang out with my family. Not I have to. When you say I have to, immediately it feels like a burden. I get to, immediately you're reminded that there are people that don't get to do that. And one day there will be a day where you don't get to do that. And so gratitude is going to release positive chemicals inside of you. Choosing is also going to be another word. I choose to do this. You don't have to do this. No one's making you do this. No one's got a gun to your head or, a whip that actually is making you do some of the things. I'm choosing to. So, hey, what are you doing today? Well, I'm choosing to go here, and I'm choosing to go visit my family, or I'm choosing to go see my friend. Oh, no, I don't have to. Have creates burden. Words have power, guys. It changes your frequency. When you add a word yet to something, you open up the possibility. So when you say, I can't do this, I can't wake up at 5 a.m. I can't wake up at 5 a.m. yet. And so there is a way that I could wake up at 5 a.m. if I really willed it to. And I really just have to learn the skills to be able to do that. And so it's going to be very important that you add that word to it. And so I'm not going to go too much more into any of these other things. I will say this last thing here, which is to own your mornings and to claim your evenings. owning your mornings, the way you start your day is going to be literally setting up the rest of the day for you. And ending your day is going to be, you know, really setting up the next day, as well as helping you wind down. And so claim your evenings and own your mornings. It's going to be very important to wake up at the same time every day, adopt a morning routine, ditch your phone for the first hour, ask yourself, what is the best version of myself that I can be today? And I ask myself that time, and then I visualize that. 3 minutes. What is that going to look like? If I'm learning, you know, if I'm trying to learn a new skill, I actually see myself practicing that skill, and that actually releases those chemicals in my body before I even start. My morning routine has meditation. It might have drinking some lemon water. It also has, I wear a face mask every morning. It's like self-care. And then evening should have the same routine, having a cup of tea, reading a novel, pillow spray, having a bedtime routine where you actually start to wind down so you can get that deep restorative sleep. So it's going to be very, very important for you guys to own your mornings and to claim your evenings. These are some of the apps that I recommend, but there's others. There's a whole lot of other stuff that I recommend, and it's on my Instagram channel, Omvana, YouTube videos. There's a lot of other things that you guys can do for anti-stress apps. These chakra meditations are really amazing. So if you Google 21-minute seed mantra or 21-minute extremely powerful chakra healing, you actually will come up with this 21-minute meditation, which I really love, and they use binaural beats. It's also in my Instagram highlights where I recommend some of these things. These are some of the Instagram accounts that I contribute to. So there's the LightHouse Arabia one, there's Dr. Saliha Afridi, there is at Lighthearted Parenting and Smart Heart Board Game. These two are for parents. And then we have a TikTok account, as well as Lighthouse Insight for people who just want really like concise, quick, and if you have teenagers and you want to share some of that information with them, this is what we've created for young adults and for succinct, quick insights. And so I'm now able to take some questions. We went a little bit over time. Let's see, I'm reading the questions now. Yeah, so someone says sleep is super important, meditation and exercise, having a good morning routine. Absolutely. So somebody said, will power nap help to reduce stress? So guys, naps act unless you are like a master napper, which basically means that you can sleep for 8 to 10 minutes. You don't want to nap, because if you sleep for 20, 30, 1 hour, this type of thing, then you actually are disrupting your sleep cycle at night. So power naps only if you can sleep for 8 minutes. And really it's a skill that most people don't have, because what happens is you have, I can't think of the word right now, but you actually have sleep residue basically that actually lingers on if you sleep for more than that. And then you end up being groggy, and then it ends up taking you longer to actually get restarted. And if you sleep for a long time, we have a chemical that builds up in our brain, which is called adenosine. And actually, if you sleep for an hour or 2 hours, that means you're going to sleep an hour or 2 hours later than what you probably should be sleeping, because we need that buildup of adenosine to actually make us drowsy. And I have buildup. If I take a nap, that buildup drops those 2 hours or 1 hour. And then I'm now, instead of sleeping at 9 p.m., sleeping at 10. Or if I'm not sleeping at 10, I'm sleeping at 11. So you don't want to nap unless you are a power napper. A lot of questions here about sleep, guys. I have a YouTube video on my YouTube channel. So if you go at Dr. Saliha Afridi, oh no, not at, sorry guys. If you go on YouTube and you look up Dr. Saliha Afridi, I have a YouTube channel, and on that YouTube channel, I have a talk for sleep. So you guys can go and access that talk for sleep, and it goes through every question that I'm seeing. on sleep. And so it's really important for you to understand that it is literally going to impact every nook and cranny of your mind, body, spirit, if you are not getting the right kind of sleep. There's no such thing as oversleeping. If you are oversleeping, then on a day-to-day basis, then it could be a sign that you are not, something in your body is not regulated. But some people can sleep 9 hours and that's their normal. I can sleep 7.5 maximum. No matter rain, shine, vacation, no, if I get my 7.5 hours, like my body just automatically wakes up. I've not used an alarm clock for eons now. And so you need to know what your circadian rhythm cycle is. And so some people it's 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours. But if you're sleeping 11, 12, 13 hours, then it probably is that you're not getting the right kind of sleep, or that there's some other deficiency in your body, or you could be depressed because hypersomnia actually could be a sign of some other difficulty that you might be going through. So quality of sleep is going to matter. I don't have a video for time management, but I put a lot of stuff on Instagram for this kind of stuff. So that should be something that I create, is the time management webinar, but I haven't done that yet because it does require you to know your own energy levels. And so I know my time and my energy is going to look very different than your time and energy, because so much about time management is about energy management. And a lot of people are so good at managing their time, but they're like, oh, look, I have this time at 4 o'clock and then I can do this at 5 and then I can do this at 6. And then come 3 o'clock, they're exhausted. And then they're like, yeah, I don't want to do anything else for the rest of the day. So if you don't know about your energy levels during that day, so when I'm looking at my schedule, I'm saying, am I going to have energy at 4 p.m. to be able to take that call? Because that call is going to be really taxing. Nope, not going to have energy at 4. Find some time early in the morning. All right, that's not going to happen on Tuesday. It's not going to happen on Wednesday. Thursday morning, put that time in because I need energy for that call. So I'm not just looking at time. I'm looking at my energy as I'm time boxing things and moving that matrix around. You're going to need to know how to do that. What takes energy? What gives you energy? Where is your cutoff? For me, I cannot, for the life of me, if you tell me you need to work out at 5 p.m., no way, I'm not doing it. But if you tell me you can wake up at 6 a.m., I can do it, no problem. So I just don't have energy by the end of the day. It's just not how my body works. It's not how my hormones work. I can't. And so there are some people who can do it and there are some people who can't. I'm one of those people. So I got to do it first thing in the morning, and it generates energy for me to move through the rest of the day. I just feel like I should get a medal, and it has a lot of positive chemicals released in my body as a result of that as well. So it's going to be very, very important for you to know your energy if you're going to manage your time. Yes, the recording will be shared with you. And last question, guys, before I log off and let you go off as well, is the question here is, how do you avoid toxic energy from close friends, even though you want to help them? So that's a very tricky question. I don't think I can answer that, but on my Instagram, I have a whole series for empaths on managing energy. 5 videos that I've created for that. And so I really want you to go and check out those 5 videos about how do you manage your energy, how do you ground yourself, how do you take things on versus how do you keep things with the other person, how do you shield yourself from negative energy. All of these are skills, and I possibly cannot do that within 2 minutes. And so I encourage you to watch those videos on my Instagram for the Empath series. And that's all I have for you guys today. And if you have any other questions for me, remember you can direct message me on my Instagram channel and I will be happy to answer. I also have a lot of other webinars like this one on my YouTube. So please check those out. They might be helpful. I have one on coping on anxiety, cultivating healthy habits, and lots of other topics. So you might find those helpful as well. So I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope you have a good rest of the day and good rest of the week. Take care, guys. Bye.